Greetings, it's Ruth Shilling here. I'm delighted to be with you all today. I'm just going to start by sharing my screen because I think it's kind of nice to have visuals sometimes. So the topic that I'm going to be talking about is afterlife communication and the continuity of life. So I'm speaking from the mediumistic perspective, the perspective of a medium. So I think that first of all, it's good to just define what is a medium. Here, okay. A medium is a person who communicates with those who are in the non-physical, those that are not physical. And the goal of evidential mediumship is to prove the continuity of life. In other words, that people survive a death as we know it. Now, it's important to see that the word prove is in there. So how can we possibly prove anything? Well, to prove, we simply must have evidence, and it should be verifiable evidence. So that's why it's called evidential mediumship. So this isn't just speaking with angels or spirit guides or something of this sort. These are people who have passed on, and there need to be people in the living who can verify what these spirit people are saying or telling us about. Now, the foremost school for learning and studying the evidential mediumship is the Arthur Findlay College. It's in the UK, and it's fondly known as Hogwarts for mediums. You know, just like Harry Potter school. And believe it or not, it is actually a lot like Harry Potter school. I mean, just look at it here. This is what it looks like, and sure enough, there's Harry Potter, one of my fellow students there when I was there. So the very first time, I've been there a number of times, but the very first time I went, I was not very advanced. I was a sort of a beginner with the evidential mediumship. Most of my classmates were much more advanced, much more expert than I was. But it's a week-long training. You live there, and you have classes all day long and even things in the evening. So this was my class, my first, the first class I took. And towards the end of the week, we had to stand up in front of the class and make what they call a link. In other words, I needed to link with a spirit person that was related or that somebody in my class knew. So this wasn't just a one-on-one, which we had practiced a lot of, but this was standing up in front of the whole group. Well, what ended up happening is, as I got, you see this man over here behind me, his third or fourth grade teacher, I can't remember which, was the one that I ended up linking with. And, you know, I'm a teacher, so it's common that I end up getting people's teachers that pop in. But anyway, I was doing pretty well. I was getting, you know, some things, enough that I could describe her and he could know that it was her. And suddenly I actually heard in my head, Sylvia. And I thought, oh, that's probably her name, but I didn't want to say it because I thought I might be wrong. And I was doing pretty well. I didn't want to mess it up. I mean, with a name, either you got it or it's not, you know, it's one or the other. So anyway, I kept giving other kinds of evidence. And then I heard it again, Sylvia. Well, again, I held back. And finally, a third time, she says, Sylvia. Well, this time I thought, okay, I'll just try it. And, you know, I'm here to learn anyway, even if I screw up. And so I said, well, she's telling me her name is Sylvia. Well, this man, I mean, he didn't know what his third grade teacher's first name was. I mean, you know, he just knew her as Mrs. McGillicuddy or whatever. So anyway, we weren't able to call that true evidence because it wasn't verifiable. But the funny thing is that when he said that, I said, she's saying her name is Sylvia. And it sounded like I knew what I was talking about, even though inside I did not feel that confident. At any rate, the next day, when we came into class, the man there, he said, I have an announcement to make. And he said, I called my father last night and asked him what was Mrs. McGillicuddy's first name. And you guessed it, Sylvia, right? So this was wonderful evidence for me, because to begin with, how would I even come up with a name out of the blue like that? But also, he didn't even know the name. So it wasn't like I was doing mind reading or reading it from his aura or something like that, because I didn't know and he didn't know. But Sylvia knew. So Sylvia was there in spirit, and she was definitely communicating to me. So that was a very good experience for me as somebody who wanted to gain more confidence in what I was getting from the spirit world. Though I wanted to tell you another story too, and this one, I published, my first book was published in Egypt, and my mom came on that tour with me. So when I first got the book, she was there and we were celebrating. Oh, wow, isn't this great? And all this kind of stuff. And then also she liked to write herself. So I wrote, I put together her different writings so that she could give them out. I got them printed up and all this kind of stuff. So we worked on this kind of thing together. And after she passed, I wrote the first book that I published myself. It was about the violin and being successful with that. And when it came that it was going to actually go live on Amazon and be, birthed into the world, I was just so sad that that she wasn't there to share that with me. I just knew she'd say, "Wow, that's great," and we would celebrate together, and it would just be so nice. And but she was gone. So anyway, the day before it actually went live on Amazon, I woke up in the morning and I just I had my eyes closed, and in the upper left part of my vision, I saw this. It was like a little note, and it said, "Wow." And then as I watched, it flipped over and it said, "Mom." And then it faded out and it was gone. And it was just, it couldn't have been more perfect, because it had the message just exactly what I would have expected that she would want to say. And she said it was her. And the other thing is that she loved to play around with words and letters and stuff. So that, like, if you had a happy birthday card, she'd have a word for happy and for the H, and a word for the A and the P and things like that. And she was always having fun. She did drawings with different letters and things like that. So having this communication from her, it was her personality too. That's just the kind of thing she did in this life. So that was just a tremendous, tremendous gift. And again, this perfect evidence that we do continue, and we still have our personalities, and we can communicate in different ways. Anyway, this evening, Ben had said that the focus was going to be then on how does knowing all this stuff benefit us, in our everyday life. So I've written what I think are some important points, and some of them you probably already heard, but I'll go through them here. First of all, when we know that we continue after what we think of as death, that just puts our whole lives in a different context. And we no longer fear annihilation, that we will cease to exist. This is one of the most basic fears that practically everyone living has. And it shapes a person's life. And when we no longer have that fear, it just, it's a great benefit, because we know the things that matter are the choices that we make, things like that, not whether we survive this or that in the physical form. Another thing that it tells us is that, that we're never alone. I mean, we know then that there are helpful beings, spirit beings around us. They can guide us, help us, and there is so much love. We're held in that embrace of love all the time. And we may not always feel it. Probably a lot of times we don't feel it, but that doesn't mean it's not there. It exists and it's there. So that's a real benefit to us too. And when the other thing is, when we know that we're more than our physical bodies, it begins to, if we're not just our physical bodies, then what are we? And then it opens up to us that we are a part of this greater whole. We are a part of this greater life experience. And so when we have that, we feel more connected to other people, because the same stuff that made each one of us, it's everybody else too. And so we're not just this separate little item, like we might think if we didn't know about this stuff. And when we have that feeling of connection, it's much more likely that we're going to express compassion and kindness. We just celebrated the Martin Luther King birthday, and I thought this quote was a nice one to include here. We may have arrived on different ships, but we're all in the same boat now. And it fits in with the inauguration speech that we just had. We're trying to find that unity that we do share is really probably the biggest challenge of this time. Because when we have that unity, we can face all these different problems we have. But when we're separate, it's just really tough. So here are the basic things here I shared with you: that we continue after we die, that we're never alone, and that we're more than our physical bodies. We're a part of a much greater whole. And we're all in this together. So that's the end of my contribution here. If you're interested in knowing more about mediumship, I have written a number of books, and these 3 about mediumship are very user-friendly. They're interviews I did with some of the most famous mediums around. And my latest book is sort of a picture book with some information in it as well about ancient Egypt, and below is my website. So thank you so much.